this is Victoria Price. Welcome to Hide and Seek, a podcast for hiders and seekers and sharers, maybe even oversharers like me. I began this podcast because I was struggling with how to emerge from a year plus of isolation in a balanced way, to integrate all the good I have learned, to respect my joy in solitude, but also acknowledge my tendency to be a hermit, to recognize that sometimes the reasons I want to hide aren't all that good, while other times it's actually not hiding at all, but rather learning to be still. And to share the ways I'm seeking, we're all seeking, to be better people. But mostly, to hold myself accountable to whomever might be listening as we all come out of our caves in hopefully more honest ways, in ways that give something back instead of just taking from our world. So today's podcast begins with a moment of peculiar anxiety. I belong to a group called Everwalk, and each month I lead a local walk. This Saturday, as I got ready to go out and lead my walk, however, I felt nervous, which is weird because I love to walk, and I knew a bunch of the people. I love to chat with new people, so what on earth was there to feel nervous about? Well, I thought about this, and I realized that anything that becomes habitual in good or not so good ways comes to feel familiar. And so when we jerk ourselves out of a familiar rut, there will always be a feeling of discomfort. The key is to figure out whether the discomfort is positive or not. In other words, to learn to listen to ourselves with radical honesty. Because let's face it, when we're in a groove that's not so good for us, say overspending, overeating, overworking, overworrying, that little voice isn't going to say, gee, I know this overspending, overeating, overworking, overworrying isn't very good for you, so maybe you need to find more balance. Oh no. It's going to say, you absolutely need that midnight snack. Or, yeah, treat yourself to that lovely little thing you found on Etsy. Or, you definitely need to work late tonight. You need to work late every night. Or, why worry? Well, here's a bunch of very good reasons for you to worry. And so the discomfort we feel in saying no to that very persuasive voice is to be expected because that voice has us right where it wants us, in its thrall. But here's something for you to think about. If there's a voice in your head talking to you, then who's listening? Are you the voice talking? Or the voice listening? Or both? Or neither? Well, let's break that down a little. I believe that our true selves are the voices that listen, but also talk. But there's another voice that talks. And which voice, which us is that? Is it our true self, or is it the self we have learned to be over the course of a lifetime of accumulating stories about our identities and the world itself? Which voice, which us is listening or talking? Well, I think that depends. And so we, our true selves, need to learn to listen in a different way to figure out which voice we want to invite in, which voice we want to choose to hear, the voice that is always speaking a larger, loving truth, or the voice that keeps us stuck in a groove that doesn't serve us or our world. So that anxious voice that spoke to me on the way out the door last weekend was not my true self. It was the voice that has always told me I'm not good enough, that I need to hide for so many reasons, that I'm a bad person and have been a bad person for a long, long time. That voice used to harangue me all the time with self-loathing and self-hatred, but over time I learned to stop tuning into that station. But the voice didn't stop talking. It just changed its tune until it found a tune, a station I would listen to. Call it a kindler, gentler version of self-loathing. So that voice that was making me anxious about going out in public was hornswoggling me into making me think there was a genuine reason to be anxious. Once I realized I was being hornswoggled, I got up, got out, and had the loveliest morning. And one of the places we visited on our walk was a cemetery, where we saw the actual angel that inspired Thomas Wolfe's classic novel, Look Homeward, Angel. In that book, Thomas Wolfe wrote, "Each moment is the fruit of 40,000 years. And each moment is also the result of our thinking enacted out in the world, which is the result of the fruit of 40,000 years of thinking passed down from generation to generation till it gets to us. The question is, will we keep listening or will we find new ways of moving through the world?" You know, this pandemic had the opportunity to teach us something radically new. We could have looked at this situation and said, no, we're not different countries with different beliefs and colors of skin and political systems and religions and histories. No, we're one planet, and we need to come together to solve this as one planet. But did we do that? No. And so here we are at the place we began, in a world divided, still realizing that if we don't find a way to come together, then this world won't heal. But where does that healing begin? With each of us. We have to walk our talk and keep walking it. One of our walkers last Saturday told us the story of going to hear the author Pat Conroy speak at a benefit for the Thomas Wolfe House, which is a museum that preserves the house of the author. Well, Pat Conroy, himself an author of epic novels such as The Prince of Tides and The Great Santini, brought his 10th grade teacher on stage with him for this benefit. Why? Because this teacher had asked his 10th grade class to read Look Homeward, Angel, and that book changed Conroy's life. It remained the most influential book of his life. And then this teacher took the class on a field trip to the Wolfe House. And as Pat Conroy, 10th grade Pat Conroy, walked through each room, in his mind he began to envision and understand what a writer's life could look like. And that's when he decided that he wanted to become a writer. So when that house was almost destroyed by a fire, he wanted to be sure that other kids weren't deprived of the same opportunity he had had to imagine becoming a writer. So Pat Conroy and his 10th grade teacher did that benefit together to save that house. Pat Conroy walked his talk. I loved hearing that story, and it was just what I needed last weekend because it reminded me that the whole purpose of podcasting and blogging is not to talk about ourselves, but to share the things that will bring us together. And I know that there are many people who are finding this emergence challenging, and for a variety of reasons. That's why it's so important that we find ways to support one another as we emerge gently back into the world, a world that we are responsible for co-creating and healing. We have to realize that there are two ways of walking our talk. One that comes from the holistic, true voice of love and good speaking to and through each of us, instead of the other one, which frankly is always and only saying, what's in this for me? Because that's all I care about. So which voice am I going to choose to listen to? And which voice are you going to choose to listen to as we all learn to walk our talk? I'm going to try every day to choose love. Let me say that again. I'm going to try every day to choose love. So thanks for listening to this podcast of Hide and Seek, a podcast about hiding and seeking and sharing this process of emerging and of living and of loving together. Emerge gently. Emerge in, as, with Have a great week.